Welcome, this is the 8th video in Darton College's Science Department's Flipped Learning series on forces of motion. Hi, my name is Mr. Clee. Don't forget to follow us for the most recently updated and released videos at Darton Science on Twitter and using the hashtag DartonFlipped. So this video is all about power, and after this video we should be able to describe what power is and know what the units are. We should be able to define and use the power equation, relating the power of a car to how much fuel it uses, and combine the work equation from the last video and the new power equation to get a second equation for power. If you do PE, you might be aware of what power is. It's essentially how quickly you can do a certain amount of work. So strength is being able to lift something, power is being able to lift something really quickly. Essentially, it's the amount of work that you do, which is the force times distance from last lesson, is equal, divided by the time it takes you, is equal to power. Remembering that to use a triangle like this, the way to do that is to cover up the thing that you wanted to find out. So if you cover up power here, then you end up with work divided by time. We measure power in watts. 1 watt is 1 joule every second. So this light bulb here, if it is a 60 watt light bulb, will be transferring 60 joules of energy in a second, or 60 watts. Using the equation power equals work divided by time. Don't forget, when we use things like kilowatts, we're talking about 1,000 watts. When we're talking about megawatts, we're talking about 1,000,000 watts or 1,000 kilowatts. Electrical power usually means that in the same amount of time you increase the amount of work that you do. So if you increase the amount of work in the same amount of time, you therefore increase the amount of power that you're having to apply to something. So on this electrical cooker that we have here, if you turn it up, then it's doing more work in the same amount of time and it requires a higher power rating. In terms of appliances, generally speaking, the higher, if an appliance involves heating or movement, it requires more, it's a higher power rating than if it does not. So you can see here that we've got a microwave which has a really high power rating, 950 kilowatts, compared to a light bulb and an energy saving light bulb which have 100 and a 20 watt rating. Here we have a human and a horse. A horse will become important later because we talk about horsepower, and 1 horsepower is the equivalent to 750 watts. Power station down at the bottom, which is generating electricity, which works at a really high power, transferring 850 million watts every single second, doing 850 million joules worth of work every second. So I did say we would lead on to cars. Here are 2 cars. This one is obviously the most powerful and would accelerate at a much quicker rate. The reason for that is because it can transfer energy more quickly. It means it can accelerate to a higher top speed. It can work harder in the same amount of time. It is more powerful. So in effect, power is the energy transfer divided by time. If you remember, the reason that work was measured in joules is because the amount of work that you do is equal to the amount of energy that you transfer. So these guys here that transfer energy really quickly in a short amount of time are really powerful. Because they're so powerful, we use a convention called brake horsepowers. The number of joules is massive, so we can't talk about the number of joules, we have to talk in terms of horsepowers. A family car which has a brake horsepower of 100 would be transferring the amount of energy, the same amount of energy that a horse or 100 horses could transfer in the same amount of time. So we saw from the previous slide that a horse transfers about 750 watts of energy, so 100 brake horsepower would be 75,000 watts or 75 kilowatts. When you've got a high performance car that's got as much as 500 brake horsepower, then that's, you can see down here, a much higher number, 5 times that, so 375,000 watts of energy. And the final thing is combining these 2 equations. This is the work done equation from last time. The amount of work that you do is equal to the force times the distance. This is the equation from this lesson. The amount of power is equal to the work that you do in the amount of time. So if you substitute this part of the equation and swap it for work done in this equation, what you end up with is this equation down at the bottom. The power is equal to the force times by the distance divided by the time, which is combining these two equations to give this one. It just helps you in situations where you're asked to, let's say you were asked to say how far something had to move in a certain amount, how far a certain mass had to move in a certain amount of time. Rather than do it in 2 stages, you can do it in 1 stage. So in summary, power is how quickly you do work, and it's measured in watts using the equation power equals work done divided by time. When you have more powerful cars, they transfer energy more quickly. Because they're transferring energy more quickly, they have to use more fuel. And when you combine these two equations, the power equation and the work equation, you end up with power is equal to force times distance divided by time. Thank you very much for watching. This video is the one for Tuesday, it's next Tuesday, which would be the 6th of May. Please remember to bring your evidence in your purple books. My name is Mr. Clee. Thank you very much for watching.